Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Saturday night mailbag. I'm your host, Brandon. I'm back, and I brought back Scott Connor, one half of Manic and Chill. Last week we were supposed to go, and then about 30 minutes before, Scott was like, "Hey, man, we gotta push back 1 week." And I said, "Sure, no thing, you got it." And so we've got Scott on. Scott, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. I appreciate you accommodating my week late on getting back on the mailbag show. So you will get a mailbag show, I assume, next week. So we'll get 2 weeks in a row of the mailbag show. But excited to be on. It's a fun time. The Discord's been ramping up every single minute. There seems to be some sort of training camp blurb that is coming out, and it makes you wonder, like, do I act on this, or is this just an overreaction? But it's a fun time. This next month it feels kind of like the grind, but it's not quite the day-to-day, game-to-game grind that we get during the season. So I'm excited for this mailbag. I'm excited for August. July was a hellacious month, so ready to move forward. Excited to be back.
Yeah, we had football on Thursday night, Scott. We had the Hall of Fame game, Chargers and Detroit. Do you have any major takeaways that you had from that game, or is it just everybody's healthy? Is that the major takeaway from the game?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times health after the preseason, there's very minimal risk probably for a lot of teams and a lot of star players. But I want to talk about this real quick. There was a lot of conversation. Oh, is Trey Lance now a viable backup quarterback? Is he a guy? I mean, I heard it in the Discord. We have the Friday morning drive that posted the morning after the game. And they talked about, I wasn't on, but they talked about Trey Lance and, oh, he's a guy I would roster now. And it's like, first of all, it was the Hall of Fame game. There's been a lot of quarterbacks that have played in the Hall of Fame game before, and they were nowhere close to the backup, Brandon. So I don't know what that means for Hendon Hooker, but at the same time, like, if you were debating whether you should pick up Trey Lance or not, you probably weren't really following any sort of principle on whether you think he's going to be the backup. You know what I mean? Like, what do you expect? Like, if you're not already rostering backup quarterbacks, why now be interested in Trey Lance? Is there still hope that if there was like a Herbert injury, there'd be like a 1-game sample where somebody would pay for Trey Lance? Like, I don't know. I feel like I had Trey Lance already, but I was rostering because I think he could be a backup quarterback on a good offense and he can run. Like, there's something to where if he ever got in, even for a game, you'd probably rank him in the top 20, top 24 pretty easily in a given week, right? But
Yeah,
this
for a
debate
week,
of whether I should hold him or not, it's like, I don't know. What do you think?
I just feel with the whole Trey Lance situation, I think people are just kind of holding on to what was, right? Like, and I think what has also probably made it easier for folks to hold on to him is the fact that Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, guys like that who were early draft picks, right, in their drafts, they went away for a while and then they came back and they had a chance, right? And that's all I think anybody who held on to a Trey Lance share in their fantasy league, they just want hope, right? They just want an opportunity for him to show himself. Now, it's going to take Justin Herbert to get off the field for that to happen. It's not like it's not like Trey Lance is in a situation where, you know, it's not an Indianapolis, right? Where it's Rich has been wobbly his first few years and they brought in Daniel Jones to provide some competition. Like, Trey Lance is already going to be he's probably the QB3, if we're being honest. I mean, Taylor Heinicke is probably the backup for right now. Like, Trey Lance is probably going to be the emergency quarterback. But I think there is, you know, if he was to ever get on the field, like you said, like, there'd be folks in that week that would want him because of his rushing upside and his ability to throw the football a little bit. And I think there would be some definite intrigue there. So I can see where people have the hopium for him. I personally probably wouldn't have him on any of my fantasy teams if I'm trying to compete. I don't know if I would roster him if I had even if I was rebuilding, just because what are the odds that he even gets on the field? And if he does, then what are you selling him for? You know, are you selling him for any third?
You're not. I think
you're going to hold on to it for the week, for that 1 week, right? You're going to want the points.
Maybe. I think what's missing in the conversation is I've talked about rostering the backup quarterbacks for years. So I'm already rostering. I mean, I have 16 shares of Tyson Bagent, probably have double figure shares of Zach Wilson, those types. But there really, at quarterback, there really isn't a hope for those guys to become a starter with any sort of security. Because the same person that would be excited about Trey Lance after that Thursday night, you know who they think sucks? Spencer Rattler. It's like, what's the difference? You know what I mean? One of them probably has a much better shot of playing, but there's nobody excited for anything Spencer Rattler could do. But Trey Lance, it's like, oh my God. I think it's because it was an island game. It was the first game of the year. It's interesting to hear the conversation just because I wasn't in the room, Brandon. So the discussions were like, and there were a couple people that were like, I don't hold backup quarterbacks unless they have an opportunity, meaning like, I'm not picking Trey Lance up unless he's confirmed to be the backup. Because I agree with you. If they needed a starter week 1, it's not Trey Lance. They would go to the guy that started 20 plus games already. That's been there multiple years. You know what I mean? So it just kind of feels like one of those where people are just looking for something to talk about. Because I can name 3 or 4 guys that had the same type of hype or capital as Trey Lance, and nobody cares about him. So I just thought it was interesting because that conversation came up and they got into a debate of like, oh, do I carry backup quarterbacks? What kind of backup quarterbacks do I carry? There's a lot of unsexy ones, Brandon, that have a much better shot of playing than Trey Lance probably does, but people don't roster those guys. So anyway, let's get to the questions. I just want to bring that up.
Yeah, no, it was a good thought. I mean, again, it's an island game. We do this every week, right? On a Sunday night going into a Monday night going into a Tuesday, a Thursday night game, right? There's always these island games with these island game moments, and it's very fascinating to see what people talk about post that one game. But let's get into the question. Let's get into the questions because that's what they want. They want us to get into the questions. Yeah, the Geno storyline gives people hope.
Hey, let's keep that same energy for how many Mitch Trubisky's are still being held. What's the difference between him and Trey Lance? Other than he's probably trusted a lot more at this point. As gross as it is, what's the difference?
Might as well hold those Tommy DeVitos too while we're at it.
Well, we're talking about Mitch Trubisky was a top 5 pick, right? Yeah. More, just as much or more pedigree, and he has a much more experience. So anyway.
Well, speaking of trading camp, let's open up with this question. Scott, what is your most entertaining storyline so far coming out of training camp?
Oh,
because there's been a lot, right?
There's been a lot of them. There's probably 3 or 4 that have been just a daily saga. I mean, the Niners injuries, it's like a new one every day. And then there's guys coming back and then there's another guy getting injured. It's kind of like, I almost want to take all the Niners injuries and just throw them out, Brandon, and just say, you know what? They're all going to show up week 1 unless I hear that somebody has a real injury. You know what I mean? Like this guy has a torn Achilles or something like that. Like I'm not banking that all of these guys are going to be unavailable. I think for me, I think the Terry McLaurin one is pretty interesting because this is an offense that people are saying is going to be one of the best in the league. Like, have we seen and you can say Lamar Jackson, and if that's the peak that you want to probably see from Jaden Daniels, I would argue Lamar Jackson has never had as poor of weapons as Jaden Daniels has right now if you take Terry McLaurin off the field. Would you agree with that? Like his best weapon is not as good as Mark Andrews or not as good as some of the running backs that Lamar Jackson has had. So I'm looking at that going like, isn't it interesting that did you think the McLaurin situation would get this far and start to go this south to the point where it's like, he's probably not going to be in camp. And you may say that doesn't matter, blah, 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 but like there's high expectations. It's probably conference championship or bust again for the Commanders. And that's a tall task we see a lot of these second-year quarterbacks. Maybe they're a little better for fantasy if Jaden has to be, but I just think that one's interesting. You don't talk about a lot of the best weapon and really one of the only major weapons on a team not being available, but everyone is still, Daniels is QB1. I mean, if he's really going to throw for 4K, but Terry McLaurin may be out of the mix for a while, like right up leading to the season. And you expect Jaden to throw a run for 1,000, win the MVP, QB1? I don't know, Brandon. I think we might be setting up for ourselves for a little disappointment if this doesn't get resolved.
Not to foreshadow too much, but there is a piece of content coming out tomorrow with a redraft mock where Jaden Daniels was taken very high. And I did pose the question, is because Jaden Daniels went, spoiler alert, he went QB4 in that draft. But is there a world where he was overdrafted if this Terry McLaurin situation lingers closer to the season? And it's not because it's not to diminish the talent. It's just there still is a point of getting up to football speed. And we've seen this time and time again where guys who sit out the training camp because of contract issues and it leaks into the season. Now, Terry could sign a contract tomorrow and all could possibly be fine, right? But if this lingers another week, and maybe he signs by the end of week 3 of the preseason, and we're still 2 weeks out, I don't know how that affects the first few weeks of Terry McLaurin and Jaden Daniels, which will ultimately overall affect how we view the 2025 season for Jaden Daniels. Again, I'm not coming out and saying he's not able to be a top 4 quarterback. I'm just saying, I think, Scott, you and I are saying kind of the same thing. Like, hey, don't be shocked if the first few weeks we're sitting here looking at Jaden Daniels and he's got good stats, but not elite stats.
Is it fair to say that Jalen Hurts right now should go ahead of Jaden Daniels? I mean, because Jalen Hurts, I think people view him as, if you took a guy that's had his seasons the last 2 years, historically, that's like the QB1 off the board the next year. You know what I mean? But I think people look at Hurts, and there's 2 things that people get kind of confounded on. One, they still aren't sold that he's a great real quarterback, right? But we're sold that Jaden Daniels is all friggin' world. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is, like, everyone looks at the tush push and the Eagles last year and they go, oh, well, Jalen Hurts can't get any better than he did last year. But I've heard a lot of people talk about what happens if chaos hits the Eagles, but it's not the Jalen Hurts type chaos, right? It's like Saquon goes down or they have some injuries on defense. And then it's like, we need a pocket of Jalen Hurts just needs to go wild. You remember the stretches of Jalen Hurts where they actually had to put up a ton of points? Like, why can't that happen? And it feels like that's where people are just expecting Jaden Daniels' floor is going to be. Like, I've seen people take Burrow over Hurts because they have, you know, the Chase and Higgins stack or whatever. And it's like, it feels like Hurts is the guy that I would say should go ahead of Daniels, at least until the McLaurin thing's set up. And it feels like we're getting real NFL football in the way from saying, oh, it's easily Daniels over Hurts. I don't know if you agree with that, but I'm having a hard time clicking Daniels, knowing Hurts I can get 6 picks later. I'm talking best ball, but it's probably the same with redraft where, you know, Daniels will go ahead of Hurts because he's younger and he has a higher ceiling. But just because those guys do something as a rookie doesn't mean. How many times have we seen the second-year quarterback not be 20% better than he was as a rookie? We go, he's good, but is he really like the next Lamar? And I don't know. Just feels like we're a little ahead of our skis.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid concern. I think that's the takeaway from it. It's a valid concern. It's an interesting storyline. You know, as a Giants fan, Giants and Commanders are week 1. So I would much rather not have Terry McLaurin on the field. If I'm looking at as a Giants fan, you know, I would much rather not see him there. You know, so it's again, I think we both fully expect Terry McLaurin to get on the field in the month of September. You know, I just feel like it's just one of those things where, you know, it's something to monitor, right? Like, and somebody asked the question in our Discord, right, as we were, what kind of news, Scott, what kind of news is important to this from training camp? What is important to Dynasty and redraft? And how can we separate the hype from the actual, like, fantasy relevant news, if that makes sense, right? Because we see a lot of puff pieces and a lot of, you know, this guy looks like he's dominant here in training camp and he's going to be focused. And then all of a sudden they get to the regular season and they're barely even out there for 30% of the snaps.
Well, I think you kind of led into it with that comment. What is sticky and what is actionable? And I think you can probably test that by wait till we get into more preseason games, right? Coming up here, we're going to have every team playing this upcoming week. We're going to have every team taking the field. There's going to be highlights. Like, it's a great time for preseason to be on X or to be on YouTube or be on TikTok. Like, you just have highlight after highlight. You know what I mean? You can go through a night of scrolling and you get literally clips from everywhere. So you're going to think, oh man, every rookie is good. Every player that made a play is good. But then you think about, can I go and translate this to an actual league? Does this actually move the needle? And I feel like a lot of times, Brandon, that doesn't work. Especially in sharp communities where you go, okay, this player's that I'll give an example. So trying to think of a really good player that is probably in a tough spot right now for opportunities. So think of Jalen McMillan. Okay. Let's assume Godwin comes back and there's no news that like he's going to miss the first month or anything like that. Like, what would you want out of a guy like Jalen McMillan, who you know is a good player, right? He's probably not going to be a bust or wash out of the league. He's probably one of those guys that even if he doesn't get a lot of opportunity in the first couple years, he's a Josh Palmer. He's a Diami Brown. Like his second contract, he could go somewhere and be a 750-yard receiver. You know what I mean? But what would you look at for a guy like that if you're holding him in a dynasty league to get any hype? What would it take? Like it almost doesn't matter how much camp buzz he gets. It almost doesn't matter what he does in the preseason. It doesn't matter if he's rotating in with the first team. Like it's probably not going to move much needle until there's actual opportunity, right? So how do you treat a guy like that versus there's many others who probably are not as good as him, but are going to have much better opportunity? It feels like those guys are going to be ones where, like Luke McAffrey, for instance, I could see Luke McAffrey being a guy that goes out and smashes in the preseason. You know, McLaurin's not there. Debo's banged up. Like you could be seeing him. He gets 20 catches in the 3 preseason games. You're like, okay, he's got a shot to be their wide receiver 3. But can you actually do anything with that? Meanwhile, like you have Jalen McMillan, who doesn't matter what he does. There's not a path for any opportunity. So I kind of feel like you have to test it by saying reasonably, and don't put it out there as if I can find a fish, or like Big Diaz likes to say, the crayon leagues. Would you act on it, Brandon? If you're in a 12 by 11 best ball, like, would you go buy the Luke McCaffrey after he has a couple good preseason games? Would you go pay the third right now to get him on your roster? Like, would you do it? I think those are the ones where you can kind of figure, maybe I can go out and expect other people to act on it. But I think a lot of it is just fluff. Like I saw some Keandre Lambert Smiths and Teslas going on the block after Thursday night. Like, what's the point? What's the goal? Sure, in a 12 by 14 best ball, I'll buy one of those guys for maybe a 4th. You know what I mean? But then I see people like, oh man, I sold Tesla for a 3rd. I sold Lambert Smith for a 3rd. Like, who's actually buying those types of players? You got to weigh, can you actually do anything based on the news? And if the answer is, I'd need to pull the wool over somebody's head to actually get this done, then it's probably not actionable.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to, is like a guy like McCaffrey or McMillan. Like, when you asked the question, what do you need? Like, you don't need a week 2, 8 for 102 and 2 touchdowns. You need week 1 for him to be out there against the Giants, putting 6 for 75 and a touchdown. Then people are like, oh, all right, maybe he does have a piece in the offense. Now let's see it again, right? Let's see it again, because that's how these guys go. That's how these players become like folks that people want to move, right? Like they're not going to move them just because of a preseason piece, right? Like, or you're not gonna pull, like you said, pull the wool over somebody's eyes. Like, somebody who's sharp in your league is going to know, yeah, he's probably Luke's fighting for a roster spot, as opposed to he's not even fighting to be the number 1, right? Like, why is he even on the field to begin with?
Do you think that's a receiver thing? Doesn't it feel like if there was some clarity on maybe a tight end or a running back, that you have a better chance of moving him? I wonder if it's a positional thing, because we play a lot of best ball, but I think from like a lineup league perspective, is there a world where there might be a tight end that is getting a lot more run, or isn't really being valued at all, but might be on the field to start a season? There's, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like it's positional, where if you're trying to sell these receiver 5, 6, 7s, 8s of the world, just strictly based on a highlight or a perceived opportunity to have a role, that's a lot harder. But it does feel like there are some actionable moves to be made in the preseason. I just don't feel like I'm ever on the buying end of most of those, but I know people are out there doing them. You know, like what would it take for you to actually act on a preseason? Not for a starter, but just for a random player right now, that if I said, Brandon, would you trade a 3rd for this guy? You would say no. And it isn't because you don't think Luke McCaffrey could be good, but there's just so many of those. There's no reason to send my 1/3 for one of 100 bites at the apple that may come between now and week 15 of my season. There's just no point in doing it. But what would make you act? That's what I really want to get to the bottom of it. What would it be? Is it positional or what?
I think what would probably make me move is if there's like a severe injury or something that,
okay,
you know what I mean? Like if let's just say Terry, let's give a scenario, right? Here's a what if, right? Terry continues to hold out. Debo gets hurt week 2 in the preseason, right? It's significant enough where let's say it's a calf strain. He's out for 3. We know he's out for a month, Right now, it's like, okay, well, who do they got left? Zach Ertz. Like, that's it. Like, they don't really have anything in the wide receiver game. So now it's like, okay, I might have to go pay that third to go get a Luke McCaffrey. Like, that's the kind of stuff that it's probably not, to answer your question, it's probably not one thing. It's probably like one thing plus like other factors within that roster for me to have to move.
So say like Theo Johnson gets injured and it's Fedoni getting first team reps. You paying a third? In like a 175?
I mean, probably not, given the situation. Like, we all know that Neighbors is probably going to be getting the bulk of the work. Like, I might want to wait. I'll probably wait till week 1. Like, I want to see him do it in the game.
Now, if that's Dalton Schultz and it's Cade Stover, are you paying a third?
Same situation.
See, and that's where
I think it is a wide receiver. I think for me, it really is a wide receiver thing because there are so many of them on the field, right? Yeah. There's multiples. There's 3-4 of them, and there's 32 teams, right? So let's just say there's an average of 2.5 on the field every time at 32 teams. Like, on any given night, on any given play, there's, anywhere between 64 and 96 of them. So I can go for every Luke McCaffrey, and somebody said it right here. Squid said it, one of our members, right, to the YouTube members only. There's 2025 Luke McCaffrey equivalents on the waivers right now. Like, there's guys that are out there that are just waiting for us to pick them up. Like,
yep.
I mean, like KLS, he's probably not owned in every single league. He's probably owned in every league that Ray's involved in. He's probably involved in, 65% of DD fantasy football leagues because everybody's been scooping him up because Ray's been beating the drum for a while. But in the home leagues that maybe don't listen to our content, he's still available. And if QJ was to go down, you could easily go pick up a KLS, and he probably has more opportunity than a Luke McCaffrey.
Yeah, I think just to tie a bow on this, I think when you're looking at, because we talked about it during the draft, we talked about it in May and June, like, you pick up a lot of these guys and really you go, I'm drafting for the ADV, right? Like, I think Ty Felton could have some ADV. Pat Bryant could have some ADV. But, like, you know how hard it is to get ADV from a guy like Pat Bryant to where he's actually sellable for something? I'm not talking about, like, he's just doesn't look like he sucks. But to where I could draft him in May, Brandon, and by September, I've been able to sell him for something more than what I paid. Like that, we talk about that a lot. I'm just going to rethink that next year when we get into draft season. Like, it feels like the way that social media is now and the way that we see highlights and news blurbs on every single player, we actually become more numb to the fact that guy is getting hype because every rookie's getting some hype somewhere. But it translates to, I think, less and less actionable moves. So you're like, oh, yeah, I drafted Pat Bryant. Like, what would it take for him to get ADV to where you sell him for a profit before the season? You know what it is? He blows every other receiver on Denver out of the water. And guess what? It's not going to happen. So why did you pick him up? You just need him to be good. But there wasn't a quick flip on him, which means you end up holding him for a year, 2 years, just like people are still holding on Roman Wilson and Jermaine Burton. And they may end up being like Diami Brown, where they actually last in the league. But Diami Brown, if you still had him and he changed teams and you held him the whole time, like, he was actually a negative on your team. Do you know what I mean? Because he was a hit. He could have an 800-yard receiving year, but it was a negative hit if you had him on your roster at any point because you never got anything for him. So anyway.
Yeah, no, that was a good answer to that question. Let's go to some of the questions that came from our Discord. Scott, name your favorite 1 or 2 running backs to have this year who are not current starters on their depth chart. So not a co-starter like Najee and Hampton.
Ooh. See, it's tough when you take out the co-starter because I think some of my favorite ones that I just keep clicking over and over and over, and that if I ever see the opportunity to get them throw in, like, I want them everywhere I can get them. Does Keaton Mitchell count? I think you wouldn't consider him a co-starter, right? He's probably on most depth charts behind Justice Hill. But I think that's probably one where if you knew you ever were just that desperate to find a running back, and maybe it's more of a best ball thing, but I think even in a lineup league, like if you look at what Keaton Mitchell was when he first came out Like in college, he was a bell cow, even though he's undersized. Like you look at that first run that he had with Baltimore, he was getting 5 to 9 touches a game. You know what I mean? So probably more like a start 11 type running back, but that would probably be one. Sean Tucker, is that another one that you could throw in that technically is not the backup? Even though he had that game last year. And we'll see what the system looks like now without Liam Cohen. But everything I've heard about Tampa is they shouldn't see much change, even though I'm probably worried a little bit more about their line. But that's probably another one, Sean Tucker. Trying to think of some others. Ty Johnson, kind of like a poor man's version of what Keaton Mitchell is. Probably not the same juice, but he's been in a role for a couple of years. So that's probably a third. Like these are the ones where if I'm having to click a running back that's not a rookie, I don't want to include rookies in here because everyone could say Ollie Gordon and Trevor Etienne and Woody Marks. You know what I mean? Like all those guys are technically not backups, but they're rookies. So we've already talked about them a lot. So I'm trying to think of some non-rookies. Elijah Mitchell. It's probably another one. I don't think you'd consider him a co-starter. But I put the thread out on Twitter. I'm going to throw this back at you, Brandon. What running backs right now, and let's go a little deeper. What running backs outside like the top 60? If I told you right now, and I know you don't have the rankings up in front of you, but running backs outside the top 60, if I had to say what would be the criteria for a guy that far down to in a given week, you would rank him in the top 15 on a given week during the season. Like what type of back, not players necessarily, because the opportunity could be completely luck. If you're talking, does Sean Tucker ever get a start? Well, that could be luck. You know what I mean? But what criteria are you looking at? Like if this is the guy, because these are your like any RBs on a 53 that may be the third guy coming out of camp, but you have to decide, do I want to hold him or not? What does that look like?
It's got to probably be, I would probably start my filter at an efficient offense.
Okay.
Right? Like I don't
what
want
do you mean
like,
by efficient? You mean like
I don't want
good
that, like
or guys
like
that
good
cut
offense,
down or both or what?
It's got to be something that produces to the running back position. That's ultimately like that's the second filter with it. It's like a 1A, 1B, right? So like a guy like Devin Singletary, right? Let's just say Tracy and Scattaboo's hurt with a hamstring injury today. He's out for a month, and Tracy's ineffective. And now Devin Singletary instantly is the RB1. Do I want the RB1 of the New York Giants? Am I ever going to put the RB1 of the New York Giants in the top 20 of any ranking set?
Yeah.
Probably not. Like probably won't do that, right? But if it was to be, let's just say it's Blake Corum because Kyron Williams is out. Now we all like the Rams offense. We know that the Rams tend to be heavy with one running back. Like that's the model that I'm looking for somebody who's probably lower that would instantly jump into the top 15, right? Like if Chase Brown was to go down, how high do you think people would rank Taj Brooks? I know Taj Brooks isn't necessarily isn't the same player as Chase Brown, but it's the Cincinnati Bengals offense, right? Like it's the kind of offense where you can see if he's the starter, if he's the guy, he's going to get 15 to 20 plus touches. He's probably going to get a couple catches, and he's going to be fit in that 1 week. He's going to be pretty relevant. And if it's a matchup, let's say it's he's facing the 28th ranked rushing defense. It's going to look like a smash spot with an opportunity on a great offense. Like that's what you're looking for in that guy that can go from 65 to 15 in a week.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting ones. I think another one is Amari DiMercato. May have a role already, but that's another one where it's probably a pretty good offense. They don't have a lot of pass catchers, but that's one that's been completely forgotten. So I think a lot of times you look at these depth charts, it's not a mystery who the backup is on a lot of teams. Like you mentioned Taj Brooks. Like I think Taj Brooks is a guy that right now I think he's like in the 60s, low or high 50s, an underdog. But that I could easily see that jumping up to RB 45 to 50. You know what I mean? Just as it continues to puff up his name, and it's like, oh, he's going to get some work, like whatever it takes for him to say, oh, he's going to get some work week 1. You know what I mean? Like you could get that blurb and all of a sudden he's a top 50 running back. But I'm very interested when you go like to the third guy. Who are the third guys? Not the backups. We all know Tyler Algier is a top 15 running back if Bijan isn't playing. That's not really an answer here. And, like you said, Najee, Ramondre, whoever the Jaguars backup is, like those aren't a mystery. But I'm talking, you get to the third guy and you got to make cuts when it's cut down day. Who are you cutting and who are you keeping? What are the offenses you want to ride? I find it interesting. Sion Vaki's on waivers. Craig Reynolds is on waivers. What if both Lions backs went down? People draft the shit out of both Lions running backs, right? But no one wants any of the backup. And that's just because there's no clarity. But had they had the Lions drafted like Damian Martinez instead of the Seahawks, Brandon, people would be going, I'm drafting him. You know what I mean? It's interesting. You put the situation and then you put the name, and people sometimes just have blind spots. But good question. Great question.
Yeah. Yeah. The one that was in the chat. I mean, this is a good one. And we saw it happen to an extent, not the full level, but Isaiah Davis. He was one that came in. I mean, again, that might be an outlier, right? There's going to be, I don't want to say like, oh, I'm not going to take, the Jets offense is going to be like, sometimes there's just going to be a guy that you're going to take because everybody's going to, because the other litmus test to it is if that guy was to walk into a top 15 opportunity, could you move him in that week? Right. Yeah. If you had the discipline and you don't need him because he's your RB6, right? Isaiah Davis gets named the starter. Can I move him for a third? Because for the weeks that you had him, he was an absolute zero. You couldn't move him for nothing. Like you couldn't even. Diaz isn't even going to send you $2 in fab. He's not even trying to guess. But the second he becomes the starter, I'll take a third. You know how that guy was last year, Isaac Guerrero. Nobody wanted that Guerrero going into the season. And the second Isaac Guerrero became even remotely the guy, it was, should we be selling him for a second, Scott? I mean, I saw the questions. Scott, should I be selling him for a third? Should I be selling him for a second? Can I sell him for a first? What can I add to Guerrero to get a first? Like, those are the kind of guys that we're talking about right now.
Think about these. I'll just put this to the chat. Think about these positions. I see some comments in there. I saw Keaton Mitchell, Elijah Mitchell. Those are the ones that I said, but there's a couple others. I mean, Isaiah Davis, Kenneth Gainwell. Like, we're sure. Is Jaylen Warren for sure way better than Kenneth Gainwell? We don't know that. We don't know the Steelers exactly. You know what I mean? Like, we think it's clearly Braylon Allen and Jaylen Warren. They're both drafted way higher than those other two who don't even get picked. So you just got to think about what would happen if the starter went down. I mean, wasn't this Judkins, Sampson, Ford a month ago? Ford was dead. You know what I mean? And now it's like Ford's the biggest riser of anybody over the last 2 weeks, to the point where people are like, oh, man. I just heard a debate the other day, Brandon. What if Judkins misses the first 8 games and then he's back? Okay. Who outscores who, Ford or Sampson? If you had to bet right now, who scores more points in those 8 games, Ford or Sampson?
It's probably Ford. It'll be grimy.
The point is
he'll have the opportunity.
Everyone vaults Sampson way up, right? And then they go, well, maybe I should be taking Ford because he hasn't gone up. And then he flies up. But think about those scenarios and think about every backfield like this. Go through them in your head and go, which ones, if push came to shove and chaos hit like the Niners last year, which third or even fourth guy am I going, you know what? I want to keep him.
There's an ugly one. Dameon Pierce. Nobody wants that Dameon Pierce. Nobody wants him. But the reality is if this Mixon injury is anything that needs to be monitored, which Jeff Mueller says that it's definitely, he's out on ADP this year. But what happens if Nick Chubb just is dust? Now what?
You know the other one that's also, because Dameon Pierce has gotten cut in a lot of my leagues. You know the other one that's out there in most leagues that people are pumping up the offensive line and they're pumping up both of the guys ahead of them that no one wants to talk about. Vidal's a good one, but now that Najee's out, he's on the radar.
Yeah.
How about Ty Chandler, Brandon?
Oh,
what if both Mason and Jones were down?
Oh, gosh.
Now, by default, he would get in, right?
Yeah, I was thinking, who's the one? I was like that because I was thinking Jordan Mason, and I was like, well, who's behind him? Is it still Ty Chandler?
And he's been there for years. He started before. Like, no one even wants to think about him getting in. But he can have like a 2-game stretch where you can't pump up the offensive line and the offense for everybody and then go, man, Ty Chandler's gross. I don't want to roster him. But instead,
it's the Minnesota offense,
roster,
right? It's the Minnesota
every
offense.
Other running back. Like, I'm holding Damian Martinez, but I don't want Ty Chandler, you know? Yeah, and I mean, I was thinking Antonio Gibson. I don't know if that offensive line's just going to be a horse for anybody that gets in there, but anyway, I love the question.
But these are the kind of questions that, we try to bring here tonight. Let's get a chat question here. I saw one earlier. It was actually a really good one. All right, Dusty. Rashad White and a 2026 first or a Mecca Ibuka. I feel like I already know kind of where you want to go with this one, but I'll let you answer it.
This is a great trade. I don't know the format. Dusty, you didn't give us anything else other than this, I believe. But I'm kind of into Rashad White a little bit, Brandon. People cite like that last couple games last year, but if you look at Rashad White and Bucky, like Bucky was better than Rashad White, but people have just buried Rashad White. Like, I mean, to the point where, he's inefficient. He's going to lose his job. Sean Tucker is going to be ahead of him. You know what I mean? But meanwhile, there's other running backs that people are pumping the hell out of. It feels like there's not enough steam, but you also can't argue. Again, it's like Ty Chandler, but Rashad White is actually proven. You can't argue for the whole offense and then not like that guy. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying Rashad White is worth much in this deal, but if I had one of those teams that was built around, like, I need as many shots at these types of running backs as I can get, it's a fair price. This is exactly what I would be looking for if I was looking to cash out on Ibuka, because you're not getting 2 firsts. You're probably not getting much higher of a caliber starter than this. But I could also see where if this is all you have to pay and you have, let's say I have a roster that has a Rico Dowdle and a Rashad White, and maybe I have a couple other random guys throwing around there, Marshawn Lloyd. Like, you have a lot of these types of backups. You know what I mean? I can afford to give up one if I really want Ibuka. Because I think Ibuka is also a guy that if they announce tomorrow Godwin's going to miss the first 8 games, Ibuka is what? Wide receiver 20? Wide receiver 18? You know what I mean? Like, would it be crazy by the end of the preseason if narratives continue to trend how they are that Ibuka is easily over Travis Hunter? Would that shock you?
Would it shock you if Ibuka became everybody's wide receiver 1 from the 2025 class?
I'm just saying,
asking a
Ibuka
question.
has Ibuka, the fact that he's already where he is in the situation that he is tells me he's got some steam to still move up. So if this is what you have to pay, it's fair. So I'm going to kind of hedge. I'm going to say, like, if you just had an excess at receiver and you wanted to get liquid and get a first, this is the type of deal I would want back. Sure, I might be a little more selective on what running back I take, but I like the premise of getting a usable running back that just needs a break or two to be clearly startable every single week. And a first. Like, you probably can't ask for more. You're not getting 2.
Yep. Sean asks, what's a legit tear down from JD5?
Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Like we already talked about. I mean, in Dynasty, you should be able to get Jalen Hurts plus another starter, maybe not a first, but you should be able to add another starter, right? Like, can I get a Tyrone Tracy and Jalen Hurts for Jaden Daniels? And a lot of people would say I'm selling short.
Yeah.
You know, like that type of not worth a first, but a starter type asset. I think that's probably the first go-to, right?
Easily. Yeah. I mean, what would Joe Burrow plus what to get to JD5 to get you to move your JD5? What do I got to add to my Joe Burrow?
Dude, I love my boy Burrow, but I'm probably not paying the market price that it takes to go from Daniels to, because I'm not getting a ton of credit in that deal. You know what I mean? Like, here, can I get Burrow and Higgins for Jaden Daniels? Who's paying that? Nobody. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's kind of what it feels like I would need, but I would not expect the Burrow manager to accept that either.
Yeah.
So how do you tear off Jaden? Like, he's valued at like peak Lamar, Josh Allen, and kind of feels like the tear down. If you're not getting exactly what you want, nobody wants to tear down off of him.
What's the plus? It's not a terrible thought, but what's the plus?
I think there was one on the Dynasty Deal Show this week that was, or maybe it was last week, but it was, you get Drake May, Travion Henderson, and a 26 first for Lamar. And they saw both sides. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they ultimately disagreed with paying that, but they both agreed that that's the price that somebody that has Lamar would expect.
Mm-hmm.
But if you built your team around your future first and you have Travion Henderson that you just drafted, like, you're probably not in the position, unless you just have that FU money. You're not in a position to send that Henderson 26 first and Drake May for one Lamar. especially in a start 11, start 12, deep best ball. Like that deal just doesn't happen. If we're talking to start 9, start 10, sure. But it's hard to tear off Jaden, man. Just like tearing off Stroud last year. On paper, you should be able to do it. Then you go try to get, Pat Mahomes in a first, and people are like, no way, dude. What are you talking about? I like that.
If you could pull something like that, yeah.
That's the plus on, Caleb and May. You know what I mean? It's just not Caleb and May. I'm fine with Herbert over those two. I love that.
And a start 11, a 12 by 11. Yeah, I get
dude.
Yeah.
And now you have 7 of the 12, 27 first. Mm-hmm. You have the command on that class, and you're a contender. I mean, that's one of those FU deals, Brandon, where it's like my team's so good I can tear off of Jaden and still win the league and dominate the league in the next year or two. So I love that deal, but I think you have to have a specific team.
Yeah, it's got to be.
I'm doing that.
All right, got a rookie draft question in the middle of August 2nd. What should I do, Scott? Got a 103, 104, 105. Genty and Hampton will be gone.
Man, well, we don't know anything else about the format, right? No point per carry, no best ball, nothing.
There was no additional context to this.
I mean, I think this is probably the cop-out answer, but I'm probably just going, if I have no positional needs, I'm probably just going Hendo, Tet, Ward, and just giving myself potentially I don't want to say Hendo could be the RB1, but stranger things have happened, right?
Yep.
Just basically taking every position. Since I don't have a specific need, we don't have any context, we don't have any format or settings that would weigh it one way or the other. If it's just PPR, that's why I'm probably going. How high would you take Ibuka? Because I assume you're not taking Harvey, Judkins, Caleb Johnson are out of the mix now. Would you consider Ibuka inside like the top 6? If you could trade back, would you feel comfortable trading back one of those picks?
If I could get
a second and just get him instead of Tet?
Yeah, if I can move back off of 105, because probably most people will see like a little bit of a tier break there. Because it'd be interesting to do like a redraft of the 2025 rookie draft.
Let's do it. I think you'd go Hendo, Cam Ward. And now you're sitting at, I know I'm getting Tet, Hunter, Ibuka. Yeah. Or if I want a running back, I can it feels like at 105, you'd be willing to go back 2 or 3 spots and just feel fine with whatever you got,
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. Like if you believe in that Ibuka bullet, you pull the trigger there. Even at 105. I mean, I probably wouldn't need to. I don't think you need to do that, but I could see people saying, I got him at 105. I have conviction on him, Scott. Mm-hmm. Okay. Sure. Okay. It's good offense. It's, I could see it. I mean, you don't believe in Carolina? Sure. Okay. It's, yeah, I would try to move back anything, even a third to move back one spot. Give you a free third. It's like, it's Tet or Ibuka in a third. Most people are going to take Ibuka in a third because it's package process, right?
Honestly, sometimes, I mean, I'm superstitious like this. It takes the decision out of my hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you're going to kick yourself if you took the trade back and then someone else got, CD Lamb and you got Jerry Jeudy. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it could work out the other way around where you get a free second and then you take Ibuka over Tet and Hunter and he ends up being the best receiver in the class. And you're like, oh, yeah, I traded back and still got the same guy.
Yeah. All right, let's get to this super chat. Appreciate you, Matt. This is not his question. His question's in the chat, but appreciate you for the super chat. He's entering a rebuild with 2 teams much worse than his. Those 2 teams have multiple 2026 first and 2026, and he has his eyes set on 2027 because he wants that Jeremiah Smith, Scott. Here's his team. Jalen Hurts, Jalen Milroe, Tank Bigsby, Dylan Sampson, Drake London, Ibuka, Ridley, Higgins, McMillan, and Hawkinson. How would I go about a rebuild? Because he doesn't want to stay in the middle, but he wants a shot at that Jeremiah Smith in 2027.
I mean, do we have a lottery here? Or like you said, 2 teams worse, but like, are we saying How did you interpret that? Are we saying like there's two teams worse that I'm not going to be able to get to the bottom?
It sounds like let's just say it's a 12 by 11, 12 by 10. He knows he's the 103 for he wants to shoot. He's shooting to be the 103 because the 101 and the 102 probably have like 1 or 0 quarterbacks, right? They don't have much.
That's the thing. There's always context to these questions. How good are the other teams? It's not even how good in terms of who can beat who. When it comes down to who's the worst, a lot of times it's grinding the edges, right? Like getting rid of points where you can. Like, are there some, because you don't want to do a full rebuild where you have no foundational players.
Yeah, don't.
At the same time, if you look at his team, like there's way too many points on his team to just say that team's going to bottom out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're not winning, but you right now are probably projected, I don't want to say to be in the middle, but you're not going to get to the bottom. So there's going to be windows of opportunity where and again, you're trying to get Jeremiah Smith. So we're talking 2 years out. So you have a year to kind of let things, how can we set our team to where natural erosion hurts our team, but it doesn't hurt the value of our roster? And at the same time might help some of those other teams. Because like there's a lot that can change for the draft order in 2027, but I got to get rid of some points, Brandon. Like maybe not right now, but I probably have to be a little more aggressive in getting rid of some of those points. So,
looking at this roster,
year's potential points doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, this one doesn't matter. Like if I'm looking at long term, like within the next 2 years, the guys that have to get off the roster, or I'm at least trying to in microtransactions, is Ridley, Hawkinson, Higgins. Right, like those are the guys that are just in the middle of
honestly, you could sell me on everybody.
I mean, I could sell you on everybody, right? Like I could sell you like long term, like looking at like war on a team. Like, what's the difference between TJ Hawkinson and Elijah Arroyo in 2 years? Because that's the thing. You're looking at 2027. We're not even looking at 2025. So like Hawk in 2 years might not be the same Hawk we're looking at now. Same thing with T. Higgins. Like, there's going to be another T. Higgins.
Okay. Now that you're talking through this, I think because it's 2027 that you're trying to tank for, I'm not as concerned about how bad my team is right now. I'm not in a hurry to trade every one of these players right now. Right. Like there's guys like Higgins, you probably could move for at least a future first or more. But everybody else, Sampson, Bigsby, those guys you could legitimately be able to get a second plus after 1 or 2 games, right? And then Ridley, you'll be able to sell probably during the season if he pops. Hawkinson, the same thing. You probably think you're building around Igbuka in London, but dude, like in 2 years, they got to be real good and be staying real good for in 2 years. You go, I'm rebuilding around them again in 2027. You know what I mean? So I think it's more about you still got to accrue as much value on your roster as you can. Maybe try to kick some value to 2028. Maybe try to kick some value to 2026 in the hopes that you can play at the draft table a little more aggressively next year with some of those teams. Because basically he's saying there's 2 other teams that are already committed to tank for 2 years. And I don't know how many leagues you're in, Brandon, where you're just committed for 2 more years of tanking when there's 2 teams in the league with you doing the same thing. That feels like negative EV, right? Like 25% of you have the exact same strategy. So I don't know. Can you go the other way? Sounds like you can't. So this is tough, but I'm not worried about 2026 because who cares if your team is 7th place this year? It's going to be hard to get to the bottom with this team unless you trade some injured guys. How would you approach trading injured guys? In 2025, would you be trying to acquire injured players like the Rashee Rices of the world and stuff like that?
If I'm trying to do this strategy, like I'm leaning into that next year.
Would you do it right now though? Would you move like London and Sampson for Rice and a first?
If that was the case, I would do that. I know some people would not, but can I move Jalen Hurts for JJ McCarthy in a first and some first plus? Can I go to Drake May in a first plus? Kind of the similar deal we just talked about with tear down with JD5. I don't know if you get the full like 2027 first, but can I get a 2027 first and a second? So I can at least, because here's what I'm also trying to position too, Scott, is I'm looking at if I can't get to the 101, I need to have as many seconds and late firsts as I possibly can get to try to entice the 101 and the 102 so that I can assure myself for the player I want. if I can't get there, right? Like I need to have enough. I also have to have some draft ammo for 27 moving forward. So
Yep.
like,
Yeah.
but I don't necessarily have to get there right away. I could get there by getting 2026 seconds, right? So if I get a 2026 second for Tank Bigsby, great, cool. And I'll go pick up somebody off the waiver wire. And then I use in the draft next year, hey, can I get your 27 first? And I'll give you my 2026. I'll give you these 2026 seconds. So
I just think we did this with Marvin Harrison. We did this with Bijan. We lock in on one player and I have to get to the bottom. Much more important to structure your whole team around generally where your draft's going to be. Even if you end up with the 103, you know what I mean? Like still play the dynasty game going into next year. There's very little you can do this year to impact what the 2027 draft pick race is going to look like. But there's been many classes where it's just tank for that best player. And like that doesn't even end up being the best player. You know what I mean? And so like just set yourself up. It may be impossible to get to the bottom. And then you may look up and you go, damn, there's 3 great players in this class. And it's not the 101, but it's the 103. And it's a half a tier below Jeremiah Smith. And then you can't actually realize the trade value for you. Remember Marv, how valuable he was before he even came in the league, Brandon? Like wide receiver 4.
Gosh, he was wide receiver 4 in Dynasty. People wouldn't trade.
Couldn't even realize the value of Marv. It was so high that you're like, dude, I need Garrett Wilson in a first for Marv. And people are like, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? Like it was so high, you couldn't actually cash in on it. And that's what I feel like is going to happen with Jeremiah Smith. He's going to be viewed as like he's already CeeDee Lamb or Jamar Chase before he plays. And then you're like, well, I'd love to trade that pick for the same price I could trade those guys for. And people are like, no, not paying that. So you tanked. Great. You got a player, but you hope he's those guys. He has to be those guys, or you just sat on kind of a poison pill that was always overvalued.
Yeah. And heaven forbid if Arch Manning and Ryan Williams are in that draft too. Right. Like, the top of the 27 class could be really fun, right? But it also could be a very like a repeat of 2024 to a degree, where you didn't get Marv, but you probably felt really good if you have Marvin or if you have Malik Neighbors right now.
The number one rule, I'll just end it with this: the number one rule of rebuilding, the grind matters even more. Brandon is a pro at doing it. I've seen him do it many times. If you're the team that's tanking, every roster spot needs to be maximized. Every piece of value needs to be extracted. You may go, I'm 3 years away. Grinding that player for a 4th doesn't matter. It does. It matters way more to you than it does the top 3 teams in the league that look at your trades for a 3rd and a 4th and they go, who cares about those deals? To you, it matters. Every piece of flexibility matters. Every piece of fake production you can flip for a 28 3rd matters. Fab dollars, so you can pick up the backup quarterback. So in 3 weeks, you can flip them for a 3rd. Matters. All those deals matters. And I think a lot of rebuilders just go, all I care about is high-end assets. And they let their roster go to shit. They leave roster spots unopened. They're not active in trading or posting trade blocks. Like you could do a whole mailbag on this, Brandon. Why the grind matters more when you're last than it does if you're contending. Way more.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so for context, everybody, Scott and I are in a league, and that league, Scott, I probably did what? At least 25, 30 trades last year in that league. At least every week there was somebody. It could have been the most obscure piece. It could, like, we were talking like anytime there was a running back, he was on my roster because nobody had roster spots that were competing. And it was just like coming down to the thrift store. Like Scott,
and it was a start 13. So keep that in mind. So it made the grinding even more effective, right? Because anything with a pulse, you were able to sell.
Yeah, literally, it was knocking on the door on Tuesdays and Wednesdays of the 4 teams that were trying to compete. Like, oh, you got a 3rd? All right, let's just use this quarterback with this running back and this wide receiver. Hey, just give me a 3rd, and give me your 2 zeros from last week because they're dead. Like, I'm just going to take them. I don't care. I'm going to cut them, and I'm going to go find 2 more guys, and we're going to rotate. We're going to keep doing this. By the end of the season, I think I had 7 thirds, 5 seconds, 9 fourths, and then pretty much the entire 5th round. Did it matter that I couldn't make half of those picks? No. But
Well,
at
you
the
got to
end of
just
the
worry
day.
about that later. But in the
But
season,
yeah, you don't
didn't
worry about
need
that
the Sean Tuckers of the world. You know what I mean?
yeah, I was
Gone.
able to manipulate and control the draft, and that for me was extremely important because I was able to pick and choose what I wanted to take on my roster.
Yep.
Let's get to a couple more questions before we get out of here. Dr. B, loyal patron there. Scott, what would your team have to look like to sell your first for contending pieces today on August 2nd?
This is always that conundrum, right? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, my team is so good. Well, Brandon, if your team is so good, you know what I would argue? You don't need to sell your first. You know what I mean? Like if you're a clear, you always see this. I'm a contender. You know, Mannequin Show, we always run those playoff simulators on Dynasty Daddy. Shout out to Jeremy. And it'll be like, I'm a 98% chance to make the playoffs. 47% chance of getting a first round bye. It's like, I should sell my first, right? That's guaranteed to be bottom 2 or top 2, whatever you want to call it. And then it's like, wait a second. Why do I sell my first now? You know what I mean? My roster's already top 2, top 3. Like what right now can outrun the variance of what could happen with my team or with the value of my first or with the demand of what my first goes for or the stuff available on the market? A lot of times if you're trying to trade a first today, you're doing it with a very specific reason. Like you have a blind spot. You think your tight end is too weak. You think your flex receiver is too weak. So you feel like you have to trade your pick. You know what I mean? But you have a blind spot. You don't think about, could the market open up? Could there be more buyers or more sellers at a later time that makes it a more friendly market? So I think for me, if I'm going to do it, it's probably one of those teams that is more in the middle, but it's not for one player. You're going to give me a guy that's probably worth a first. I'm trying to think of a good receiver, maybe like a Chris Olave type, Jordan Addison type, but I need a second starter. Like I'm not getting a clear-cut great deal, but I need like 2 pieces. So will you give me, how about Jordan Addison and Chuba Hubbard in a start 11? Like that type of deal is where I would at least consider it. You know what I mean? But it's got to be a 2-for-1. It's not going to be, I'm just buying a player because I like them. Like it's not, most players are not going to be worth more than a first at this point, given how much variance can happen.
Yeah, I was thinking like Jordan Addison, Jalen Warren type, like something like that. Like it's clear he's the 1B, but they're not going to get, if it pops, it's great. And I get I get the wide receiver I want. So,
and just to be honest, Brandon, if my team sims in the bottom 4, I'm not trading my first. If anything, I'm looking for the other teams that are in that middle quadrant. Can I sucker them into giving me their first, not for the leverage deal? You know what I mean? Here, I'll give you my Jordan Addison for a first. I'm not giving you the free Chuba Hubbard as a throw-in. I'll see if I can sell him straight up for a first. So that's where you kind of get the best of both worlds if you can do that. But I want to target those teams in the middle, but I also want to trade out of there if I can get the right move or if I can get the right 2-for-1. It's got to be a leverage deal to answer your question, Dr. B. Appreciate you.
Yeah, appreciate that one. That was a good question. Scott, we're going to end on this question. I've ended it the last few times. I had Ray on. He gave me his bold prediction that Anthony Richardson would be a fantasy viable asset. Jay Rich was on 3 weeks ago and said that CeeDee Lamb would have the triple crown as a wide receiver in the year 2025. Scott, what is your bold prediction for the 2025 season?
Man, you told me this question was coming. I had all episode to think about it. I want to be super bold, but I don't want to be completely crazy. I'll go with this. I'll say that I think it's going to be one of, maybe I've narrowed it down to one of 2 combinations. Maybe it'll be 3, but one of these stacks is going to be on one of the big best ball tournament winning teams. So down the stretch, it's going to be a stack where you're going to be like, I really, and which means they're going to produce down the stretch. They're all going to be upward moving assets, both the quarterback and the tight end. It's 3 quarterback tight end stacks. One of them is going to be a league winner, Brandon. You have any clue who the 3 are going to be? And they're not super well known or super valuable, but 3 QB tight end stacks that down the stretch, I can see people going upward momentum for 2026. Then I'll give the answer. Guess who the 3 might be? QB tight end combos.
QB tight end combos. I'm going to guess one is Dak Prescott, Jake Ferguson.
Incorrect.
Okay.
Upward mobility. All 6 players, I think, have big upward mobility. Both the quarterback and the tight end have significant upward steam if this were to happen. Some good guesses in the chat. T-Law and Strange. Nope. Fields and Smith. No.
No. It's got to be.
Fields.
It's got to have upward mobility and both sides.
Forrest nailed one. Jatavian Sanders and Bryce.
JT and Bryce. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's one. I could see that.
Think of QBs with upward mobility. I see Bo Nix and Trevor Lawrence don't have a ton of upward mobility. They've already been there. You know what I mean?
That's what I was trying to do. I had to take out I'm trying to take out the older guys. So A-Rod and nope. Pat F have there is no upside there, or whatever tight end there is. AR
and Warren would be one that I would be in on AR.
Yep.
I'm back in on taking some AR, but I don't think he carries Jaylen Warren with him necessarily. I'm not betting on that.
We're not doing Loveland and Caleb, right?
No, too high.
No, too high.
We're talking all these quarterbacks are valued outside the top 18.
Top 18. Okay, so that takes Matt Stafford and Ferguson out of the way.
He has nailed one, and then I think we had a partial answer of the other.
Okay, so Ward and Chig. Okay. Yep. All right. And then a partial answer.
Go to your home, Brandon. Who's your team?
Old Jackson, Dart, and Theo Johnson?
Dart and Theo, yep.
Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, I can see it.
Yep.
Yeah, upward mobility. Yep, okay.
Yeah, they're all 3. If you saw them come on the stretch, you could see the hype for all 3 of those tight ends going into 2026. You know what I mean?
Yep, especially with the quarterback position. Yep. They're all free darts right now. I mean, Chig, Theo, and what was the third one?
Jatavian, Bryce, Chig.
Yeah, and Chig.
And Ward and Dart and Theo.
Yeah, I mean, I could see Justin Fields and Mason Taylor too. I could see it. I could see it. I don't necessarily.
Fields, I would give Fields and Taylor only because I think Fields is being very highly valued by the people that have him. But for him to have upward momentum in Dynasty, if he had a smash second half of the year, you know what I mean? Where he carried G-Dub and another weapon. And if it was Mason Taylor, you could definitely see the excitement of, because I had said this earlier, maybe this is more of the bold take. Justin Fields could be one of the big winners, because if Justin Fields goes out and has a big year, Brandon, what's going to happen?
Oh, he's signing an extension. He's getting
Will they give him the extension? If Justin Fields goes out and has a big year, why doesn't he get what Jordan Love got?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
And the thought of him getting that contract would just blow your mind. But
it's going to blow everybody's. And you know what's going to be terrible about it is if it does happen. Let's just say it does happen, right? It happens, and this time next year or just a few months earlier, Justin Fields signs a 3-year, $120 million extension, right? Because he's on technically, I think he's on a 2-year.
He's got a 2-year, but it's one of those fake ones where if he has a big year, he's going, there's no way I'm playing.
There's no way on God's green earth. That's the only quarterback.
Big. Yep.
I need 3 for 120. I want the Baker Mayfield deal, right? I'm not getting, we're not giving you 4, but we'll concede on 2 plus an extra year and give you 3 for 120. People would be all the way back in on Justin Fields. He would be top 8.
Can you imagine I don't want to wish this because I don't wish negative, but could you imagine the discourse if the Caleb Ben Johnson is a little bit of a train wreck and then Fields gets the 40 million plus a year?
Oh, Jesus.
You know, that feels like that's something that would happen to the Giants. You know what I mean?
I was listening to The Athletic, and I think it was, I forget exactly who was talking about it. It wasn't Robert Mays. It was his guest, but he was talking about this is a big year for Caleb, because if he does not step up to the plate, then Ben Johnson has to face the music at the combine and the draft, and he has to try to deflect because this is not his guy. It's just going to be, oh man, it's going to be a very interesting season. But appreciate you coming on. I know you've had a lot going on. It's been good to have you on for a second time. I will be back next week. We are not going to do a 2-week gap like we typically do. Next week, I'm going to actually announce right now, next Saturday night at 9:00, I'm bringing on Ty DeClaire.
With a better beard than mine.
I am bringing on, I'm just bringing on bearded guests. So I am bringing on old Ty DeClaire from the All Gas Trade Show. So he is going to join me next Saturday night at 9 p.m. So make sure that you like and subscribe to the YouTube page. Scott, why don't you tell people what you're up to this week and maybe next week, and what shows you're planning as we're getting closer to the 2025 season?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a heck of a month in July, but we're getting back to it. We got Mannequin Chill on Wednesdays. We have Dynasty Deal Show on Fridays. So if you like trades, I mean, if you like the old Trades in 5 show, which I do miss, but Dynasty Deal Show Friday night, 9:00. Be there. We answer everybody's trades. Join $3.99 a month, Trade and Chill tier. Get your trade answered. No matter how many you ask, we get people come in there, they ask 6 trades. Great. But jump in there Friday nights, and then we're going to get Destination Chill coming back next Sunday. Ray and I had to do a solo episode as we both had stuff come up in July where we couldn't do it together. But we'll be back at least for a couple more Sunday nights. And then there's going to be probably another show coming out during the season that'll be with Ray and I. So no details yet, but we're going to be doing a seasonal weekly show with some cool stuff. But yeah, those 3 in the Discord, ddfantasyfootball.com. If you're not already in there, check it out. And chat soon. Good job, Brandon. Great job. Brandon's coming into his own as a host. I love it. I love seeing people grow on the channel. So excited to see where you take this, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Make sure you make sure you like and subscribe. There is going to be some content out tomorrow. There is a redraft mock. It had myself, it had Ty, it had Gabe, it had old Shane. There were some takes, there were some flag plants, there was some interesting picks, but it'll be a good conversation that's going to come out tomorrow. But until next week, the Mailbag show is out. Take care, everyone. Have a good night. Peace.